Hello and welcome to this video on the sociology of the media, the new media. We begin by considering the difference between the new media and traditional media. The new media has distinctive characteristics from traditional media. When we're thinking about the new media, we're thinking about websites, we're thinking about streaming services, and we're thinking about blogs and vlogs. Whereas traditional media, we're considering newspapers, television, and radio. Livingston and Boville argued that the new media is blurring the boundaries between previously distinct activities, like finding information and seeking entertainment. Today, websites, for example, will seek to do both at the same time. This is known as technological convergence. This leads Jenkins to argue that technological convergence has led to an unintended byproduct known as cultural convergence, where consumers of the new media increasingly connect the dots between content across platforms. So we may see something on one platform, and that might lead us to again look at another platform in order to find out more information about it or to access a different form of media. The new media has four defining features. Firstly, digitality, that all data is in binary form and that we access this data via the internet, via computers, or via smart devices. Secondly, interactivity. Consumers can engage or interact in some way with the new media. This involves a participatory culture. That is to say that media content is shaped by consumer involvement. If lots of users are accessing one form of information, for example, the algorithm on, say, a social media platform will begin to push that to other users of the platform. Also, collective intelligence, or creating a buzz between users, or virality, who share knowledge with each other using a share feature in, say, a social media platform. Next, hypertextuality, that is to say there is a web of connections between different parts of the media, and so we share different bits of different forms of media between different platforms. And finally, dispersal. The new media is less centralized and more adaptive to individual need or choice. Unlike, say, a newspaper that is printed and then sent out into the world and cannot be changed unless it is corrected the next day, the new media is more dynamic. To evaluate this, however, we need to consider the extent to which the new media really differs from traditional media and to what extent this may be overstated. Marxists would argue that both are controlled by the bourgeoisie and are used to promote ruling class ideology, so there's very little difference indeed. Neo-Marxists similarly would say both present capitalism as common sense and maintain bourgeois hegemony, whilst pluralists would argue that a range of media outlets existed historically and that has only simply increased more recently. So again, very little has in fact changed as we move from traditional media to new media. Next, we must consider the demography of the new media. That is to say, which social groups are accessing the new media and which are not. The use of new media varies between social groups and has arguably created a digital underclass. We must realise that the new media is not accessed equally by all members of society, and that some are accessing it more than others. We should consider the characteristics, therefore, of new media users. New media users tend to be younger, or at the very least middle-aged. Arguably, they are more educated. Perhaps they have a university degree, for example. Could it be they're also more affluent or more middle class? Whereas those who do not use the new media or use it less tend to be more elderly or of an older generation, more likely to be materially deprived or working class, possibly disabled, and possibly living rurally compared to the more city-dwelling media users. This has led some sociologists to argue that there now exists a digital underclass in our society today. That is an underclass of people who do not have access to new media or choose not to access it or are unaware that they should be accessing it. It is argued that these groups may struggle, therefore, to participate in everyday life in our mainstream society. As, for example, when applying for jobs, most job adverts can now be found online. When it comes to applying for welfare benefits, there is an expectation this would be done through a gov.uk website. When you register to vote, for the vast majority of people, this is done via the internet. Most communications today, when not in person, are done via a smart device. and banking is increasingly found online rather than in the high street. Boyle zooms in on young people and argues that young people have grown up with the new media and have been taught how to use it. Young people consume a wider variety of media, both new and traditional, compared to previous generations, and they're more likely to go online via their mobile than those aged 55 plus. In many ways, young people are considered digital natives, accessing the new media as part of everyday life. Jones argues that social class also has an impact on new media usage. He found that 16 to 24-year-olds from disadvantaged backgrounds or working class backgrounds use the internet less frequently than those from more affluent backgrounds. So again, we must always consider who is accessing the new media and who is not. Lee and Kirkup decided to think about gender when looking at usage of the new media, and they studied the use of the internet by Chinese and British students. Men in both countries compared to women were more likely to have positive attitudes towards the internet and to use it more, were more likely to be self-confident about their skills in using the internet, were more likely to play computer games online, and less likely to use it for studying. So again, as we've just seen, there's a gender, a social class, and an age dynamic when it comes to accessing the new media. Thirdly, we need to consider whether the new media is revolutionary or evolutionary. Some sociologists argue that cultures, economies, and individual personalities have been transformed by the new media, meaning that the new media is revolutionary. Our view of privacy in the 21st century has changed as a result of the new media, and so too has our view of risk. Could it be that the new media has meant that today we are less conscious of our need for privacy, whilst at the same time are more willing to take risk with things like our personal data? Other sociologists would argue that the new media is evolutionary rather than revolutionary. Cornford and Robbins say that the new media is really a version of something which already existed, that interactivity isn't exclusive to the new media. In the past, when newspapers were part of everyday life, letter columns would exist in newspapers so that members of the public could write in to share their opinions on the matters of the day. So too, even now, phone-ins are very popular on radio and television programs. The only real innovation when it comes to new media is the speed of communication. To exemplify this argument, Boyle and Haynes give us the example of sports coverage in the media, following the development of mobile phones. Mobile phone companies claimed that this would revolutionize how customers consumed or watched sport. Instead, the integration of mobile technology with television simply added more options, for example, the red button. A simple evaluation of these arguments is that Boyle, Haynes, Cornford and Robbins were all writing before the revolutionary inventions such as wireless internet, smartphones and social media were developed, and therefore these arguments are simply outdated. The final area we need to think about is whether the new media has been good or bad for our society. Curran and Seaton identify how there has been a disagreement in sociology over whether the development of new media is a good thing or a bad thing for the population of Britain. Firstly, beginning with the cultural pessimist view, this argues that the new media has been bad for our society, that the new media is dominated by rich, powerful multinational corporations, which is inherently undemocratic, that the state often surveils new media, meaning that we have lost much of our privacy as citizens, that consumer benefits often come at social and environmental costs, for example, workers being exploited in poorer societies and damage to the environment. Even freedom of speech on the internet often manifests itself simply as freedom to post offensive material. In contrast, we have the cultural optimist or neophiliac view, which says that the new media has been good for society. That is to say that technology leads to increased consumer choice. We have more options than ever before. That more information and perspectives are being shared, making our society more democratic and open. And that content is shared across borders around the world, leading to the creation of a shared global culture. Our final consideration, therefore, is whether the new media is more democratic or less democratic than traditional media. If we argue that it's more democratic, we can say that it allows for dominant ideologies to be questioned and broken down from many different perspectives. That as consumers, there's an opportunity to create our own media and our own content and share this across the world. And that the new media is generally more representative of wider society as a whole. However, we could argue that new media is less democratic than traditional media because crowd-produced data is often badly written, uninformed, and unchecked. Also, sources which are free and easy to access often replace traditional professional material and may therefore be less valid. That's it. Thank you very much.